All right, hold on.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, baby, live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. It is the Thursday edition of the Big Radio Show, and we got a lot to talk about today. We're going to start off in hour one with a surprise visit with Dave Bronson, former mayor of Anchorage. There's been a lot of speculation over the last few weeks as to what Dave is going to be doing around the state. He stepped down at his position at the Anchorage Airport, running that joint over there. And there's people that have been talking about all kinds of things. So we're going to get his vision for the future of Alaska and find out exactly what he plans to do as we go forward with this. That's going to be joining us. He's going to be joining us here in just a second. He's hanging out, waiting in the wings right now. In hour two of the Big Radio Show, we're going to be opening up the phone lines and taking your calls. And we're going to be talking about some stuff, including a little history lesson, a little walk through the history of the PFD, the Permanent Fund Dividend. And this has been spurred by a call that I got yesterday from somebody I've known for 30 years, who was asking me, well, what do you think about the PFD? And what do you mean? Why is this going on? And why is that happening? And why are these people still, why are we electing the, and all I could think of is, welcome to the party, pal. Where you been? Where you been? So anyway, we're going to be talking about that in hour two. So we're going to get a little bit of a history of the PFD. Plus, Senator Rob Yunt wrote a post on Facebook about the PFD that was then answered by John Faulkner from Mustard, Alaska. So we've got a lot to talk about here in the next couple hours. So I hope that you are. I hope you're buckled up and ready to go. Don't forget, you can always join us on Facebook as we simulcast the radio show on Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. But Facebook is the easy place to go. If you want to jump into the chat room as well, you can join us at facebook.com/MichaelDukesShow/live. All right. That's how we work around here. All right. Well, without further ado, let's get into it and get started. Former Mayor Dave Bronson from Anchorage joins us on the phone this morning here to discuss what's happening in Alaska and what we should be paying attention to, what's going on in Dave Bronson's life. That's going to be kind of our discussion and what he sees for the future of our great state. Former Mayor Dave Bronson joins us right now. Good morning, Dave. How are you?
Michael, thanks for having me today. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's great to talk with you again. Last time we spoke was in your studio there a couple years ago.
Yeah, no, and I'm down. Of course, that was when I was in Anchorage, and of course now we've moved to Homer and got all of our stuff going on down here. So it's good to talk with you a lot. There's been lots of changes in both our lives. You tell me about tell me about life post Anchorage mayorship. I mean, that's got to be kind of a crazy. I guess relief, but at the same time kind of weird? Tell me what it's like.
Well, I had a few months off there after the mayor's after my time as mayor, and then I wound up in January at the managing Ted Stevens International Airport. Great people, great mission, but I decided after several months of that I needed to engage a little bit more. I saw some challenges within state government that I thought I could address better from a different position. And so I left that about a month ago and have been preparing, quite frankly, for today. It's kind of a big day for us, and I guess you're going to get the scoop. But I'm up here in Fairbanks to announce that I'm going to be running for governor, and you're the first to hear that publicly. So, but we just thought that was good that the folks at KFAR and 660 AM could hear that.
Yeah.
And I just want to say thanks for that opportunity.
Well, that's great. Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, there has been a lot of speculation. I saw a lot of whispering in the wings after you left, and people are like, what's going on? What's he doing? Is he doing this? Is he doing that? And throwing your hat into a race that is already pretty crowded. And so that's a challenge for sure. Dave, what are you bringing to the table here? What kind of vision are you bringing to the table for people to say, okay, amongst the other gazillion people who are running, what's Dave Bronson bringing to the table here?
Yeah, well, Michael, there are a lot of people in the race. I think there's so many, it's hard to keep track, but I think I'm number 11. But at the end of the day, I don't just bring vision, which I have. I also bring experiences. Between all the candidates, I'm the only one with chief executive experience, especially in the political area, and that skill. That skill is quite frankly necessary. We won't have time because of the times that we're in. We won't have time for on-the-job training and I bring that experience to the table as well as my vision, because there's a lot going on in the state. We're at a bit of an inflection point right now. We've got some real challenges, especially in the financial area coming forward, that we need to deal with. And if we don't do that right, we're going to continue this long slide into mediocrity, and we've got to arrest that descent. GDP keeps going down. We've got to turn that around. And the good thing is that we have right below our feet the answer to our problems, and that's the development of our land, control of our land. Just getting control of our land from the federal government really does solve a lot of our problems, and it allows us to build more homes cheaply. It creates revenue and royalties for state government. It produces, most importantly, jobs and revenues for families. Right. And that's how we got to power our way. You can't cut your way to success. I've learned that in government. You just can't. At some point, there's enough cutting, and we got to start the growing. And we always should have been in this mode where we just focus on growing, and that's developing our resources. The governor's set us up very well for the gas line, and the next governor is going to have to really work hard to bring that project home. We have some challenges in just making that gas line. We don't have the heavy equipment operators in the state to develop that gas line, and so we need vocational training. We need heavy equipment operators. We need a lot of people to power that project. And at the end of the day, we definitely need the political leadership at the state level to bring that project home.
So you're talking about, not cutting our way to success or to viability. I mean, does that mean, because again, a lot of, I think what we're looking at today is just the overexpression of government, right? I mean, we're just seeing a tremendous amount of spending based on, as opposed to what we're bringing in as income. We're living beyond our means and have been doing so since the early 2010s. And Are you saying that we can't cut anything, or that we can't cut all the way back to where we are? What's your thoughts there?
Well, you've got this sounds trite, but at the end of the day, you've got to cut in the right places and you got to grow in the right places. And that's why on day one is what I'll commit to doing is an audit of state spending. Call it a Doge if you'd like. We got to find out where the money is going and what we're spending it on. My experience in state government is a lot of times we just don't know, and we've got to find out where we have too many people and where we have too few people. There's some of the critical professions, like heavy equipment operators, and other technical positions, we're short on. We're really short on. But there's other positions where we're incredibly redundant. We've got an administrative state that gets in the way of us doing our own rules, get in the way of us doing our jobs the best way that we can. And that's got to be addressed. And at the end of the day, nearly every executive that takes over a new company has an audit. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to doge this thing and find out where the money is going, and then we got to determine as a population where the money should be going. We're focused on too many wrong things, and we're not focused on the right things. Our education system is failing us. We're pumping a lot of money into that. But of the 53 jurisdictions that are measured educationally, say fourth grade reading and math, which is a very critical measurement point, we're 51 out of 53.
Right.
That's absolutely unacceptable. And that's got to get fixed. Our PFD is, as you kind of mentioned in your intro there, you're going to have in your next segment some history, some education on that. The PFD has got to be dealt with once and for all. That discussion sucks all the oxygen out of the room in Juneau during every session.
Right.
And at the end of the day, if the legislature would just follow the law, the PFD would be nearly $3,900. Instead, it's $1,000. It's 1/4 of what it's supposed to be. We've got to get we've got to get back to following the law.
Don't worry, that's a robust PFD. We've been told by legislators. That's a robust PFD at $1,000.
Well, when we created that, the economists told us that the money is better spent by the taxpayer, by the citizens, than it is by government, because is what it does is it multiplies itself or ripples through the economy far better than if government spends it. Now, I know this gets me in trouble with the big money people in politics, because they want to take that money and spend it on capital projects. And we really do need to develop on the capital side. We need to build the roads and the bridges. But this is fighting over a pie that's too small. At the end of the day, we need leadership that's going to come in and just make the pie bigger. There's only one way out of this. There's only one way out of this, and that's make the pie bigger. And we do that by getting control of our resources from the federal government who thinks we're a colony or they think we're a federal park. No, we have people that live here all year long. And we need to develop our resources so we create the jobs and we create the revenue even for government. Right. And so is what I'm saying is I know there's this notion that we got to just cut everything, cut. No, we need to cut, but we need to do so smartly and creatively as we keep an eye on the future and what's important. Are we going to, I'd ask those people, are you going to cut the building of roads and the bridges we need to access our resources?
Well,
no.
Yeah. Well, we shouldn't. Let's dive into that for just a second, because for two things, I want to talk about the building of infrastructure and capital improvements, but you're making the argument that I think a lot of people are talking about, which is the development of resources, which is music to Alaskans' ears. We want to develop the resources, but there's a cart and a horse thing here. We have gotten to this point not because we didn't have, we've grown it beyond revenue. And the fear is that if we create new revenue streams through resources or whatever else, that all that money will just continue to be consumed, right? Because we don't have any guidelines or framework in place to hold back on the size and scope of government. That's the problem. If you feed it more, it will grow more. And so do you have a plan to try and put some of those strictures in first, or, guidelines for spending caps or something else? Because that's what, up until 2017, that's kind of what the PFD was doing, was they had to pay the PFD first, and then they had whatever was left over. Once they had that decision in 2017, they could spend it basically on whatever they want and give us whatever was left over. And that's part of the problem. We don't have any guidelines or rails on the legislature to hold back that spending. So if we expand our resource development, which will take a few years on top of everything else, they'll just spend it all anyway.
Right. And that's why the governor and me as governor, I'll use that big red pen. And I know governors have promised that before. Some have delivered, some haven't. But you have the line item veto. You can come in and veto the nonsense and develop. You're exactly right. We need those brackets that around this. We need guardrails around what they're spending. And when a previous governor changed that process and vetoed half the PFD, we started a conversation that, quite frankly, we don't want to have every year. We want to just get the PFD out the door and then see what we have. And that's tough. But there will be service cuts if we do that. And those are the cuts. That's why you need the leadership. And from that leadership, that's where you need the policies, because policies are how you govern. And those policies on what's important and what's not important is what needs to move forward. And quite frankly, we're spending too much money on too many things that just are not important.
Dave Bronson is our guest. He's just announced that he is our newest candidate for governor of the state of Alaska. He'll be making the official announcement this morning later in Fairbanks. We're going to continue with him here in just a second, but we are up against the first break. We will be back with more with Dave Bronson here in just a moment. We've got him for about another 15 minutes or so we'll be back. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Luke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll return right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, Dave Bronson is our guest. It's just you, me, and 60 of our closest friends on the internet right now, Dave, as we go through this. I want to touch base. And some people will miss this on the radio, but they'll hear it on the podcast later on. You were talking about, building out capital projects and infrastructure. One of the things that nobody really is talking about, very few candidates have even touched on is, what about the infrastructure we have now? We've got $8 billion with a B, billion dollars worth of deferred maintenance in the state for stuff that we already built. And now we want to build even more. There are so many components here that are, almost reckless and irresponsible. How can we continue to build out more if we don't have a plan to fix and maintain what we already have?
You're exactly right. You're talking to a guy who just spent the last 8 months at Department of Transportation, who's a great department that's working hard towards building a key part of that infrastructure, which is roads. But we got a marine highway system that we've got to focus on. We've got an aviation system that we have to focus on. And in pilot terms, I spent over 40 years as a professional pilot. Is where we're at. Is we're behind the power curve. And again, in pilot terms, if we don't add some more power to this thing, we're going to stall. And that's what I'm afraid of. Without the right leadership, we're going to get stuck in the we're going to stay in the groove that we're in, and we're going to stall this thing. We're going to fail, and we just can't do that. And the answer is there's one engine of finance that will power us out of this, and this is our economy, and it's a resource-based economy that we've got to develop. It's our decision to do that, because we're failing in our schools. We're failing in a lot of places, and now is the time to make these decisions on what's important to us and get this thing going. Otherwise, you want a perfect example of how this thing can go wrong? Look at California. They've been doing the same thing for over 30 years. Once they kicked the Republicans out of the state, the conservatives out of the state, and now they went from a surplus in just a few years, from a very large surplus to a very large deficit. So this is a tough call.
Right.
Look, I everybody who knows me, they know I would rather hunt and fish and fly until the day I die, but I can't sit on the sidelines and watch this train wreck. I've got to be part of the solution, and I've got to be in there fighting.
Do you have a plan for and Kevin McCabe, Representative Kevin McCabe's in the chat room, and he just mentioned that my numbers are a little old. It's not 8 billion, it's closer to 12 billion, and that doesn't include the maintenance on the REAA schools on top of that. But we're talking about, do we have a plan? Do you have some kind of plan to address that shortfall? Do we create another fund that is simply for that? Do we talk about priorities? And if it's just priorities of a governor, what happens when that governor leaves? I mean, do we have a plan to kind of address this maintenance issue on top of that?
Well, again, it comes down to revenue. We don't have enough money to do the things that we want to do because we don't have enough money to do the things we're supposed to do, and we've got to start right now. Even before the next governor comes in place, we've got to start right now and focus on creating more revenue. That's why Governor Dunleavy's just been laser focused on this gas line, maybe to the exclusion of other things that needed to get done. I don't know. But at the end of the day, this gas line is the nearest thing that can power. And of course, the revenue part of that is a few years out. And so there's a lot of challenges in between. But at the end of the day, after 40 years in flying, I learned one thing: don't argue with mathematics. And the mathematics are not in our favor right now.
Right.
And I mean, I'm comfortably retired. I don't need to do this. I could sit back and be just fine. But we've got to attract the investment, and you don't attract the investment. Look, companies are depopulating or leaving California.
Hold on,
and we can attract them here.
Okay, hold on, Dave. We're about to rejoin the radio, so let's do that. Dave Bronson is our guest. We've got him here for about another 10 minutes or so, and we're going to be out of here. Hold the line for just a second. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
We're continuing now. Dave Bronson, former Anchorage mayor, now brand spanking new candidate for governor, just announced it here a few minutes ago on the program. He'll be making the major official announcement in Fairbanks here in about an hour or so. But Dave, big question here. There's no, I don't think anybody doubts that you are a strong executive. I mean, I think you showed that in Anchorage. But what we also saw in Anchorage was a challenge where you were a strong administrator. You had definite plans. You had things you wanted to get done, but you had an assembly that just wouldn't work with you. And that stymied a lot of the growth and a lot of things. And what we're seeing now is the same kind of thing at the state level, where we can get a strong governor. And I think we need a strong governor. And as much as I like Mike Dunleavy, I think that there have definitely been things he has not been strong enough on. He hasn't engaged the public. He hasn't rallied his base. He hasn't communicated well enough. But even if you have a strong administrator, you've got a legislature in there that is not going to take kindly to you taking away their toys and taking away their ability to do what they want to do. How are you going to plan to work with the legislature? How are you going to plan to whip those people into shape and get them to all pull in the same direction? I mean, you're in a boat with 60 people in it. All's got an oar. You're on the tiller, but they're pulling in different directions. How are you going to make that work?
Well, it seems like in the state historically, from what I've seen, is you've got an elected governor, and then what you have 60 other people that also think they're the governor. That kind of stuff is, quite frankly, has got to end. The executive branch is supposed to lead this government. The legislative branch is supposed to have a big bite at the policy apple in this state. But this is what I'm encouraged about: is that the legislature, is problematic as it is, it's nothing compared to what the Anchorage Assembly was. That was a very difficult 3 years. Every time I turned around, and they would say in meetings, we're not going to do this. This is a good idea, say on homeless or finances. We're not going to do this, even though it's a good idea, because we're not going to give Bronson a win on anything. They say that. They actually verbalize that. That's fine. That's their choice. But we stood up to the woke leftists on the Assembly, and quite frankly, we won. We did a lot of good things for this. You can just look at my transition report. So as the encouraging thing, though, is this legislature is problematic is it's nowhere near as bad as the assembly. And I have friends on both sides of the aisle in Juneau that I can work with. But at the end of the day, the governor's got to lead. He's got to grab this bull by the horns. And we've got to wrestle this government to focus on those things that are important, which is control of the land, the PFD. We got to get education fixed. The gas line's got to be built. And we've got to build the infrastructure which pays the bills for all of those. It's a lot to do, and it's going to be difficult. And we don't have time for folks without the executive experience,
right,
to stand up and learn on the job what has to be done. I mean, you know, when you go up against some of these senior legislators who are very skilled, you've got to know what's really being said, and you've got to know when to say no politely. I really prefer to work with people on both sides of the aisle, but you got to say, you got to throw up the red flag sometimes, say that doesn't make sense, and the state is just not going that way. And that's what strong leadership is just going to have to do. And I'm not condemning any other governor or over the last couple of decades. Is what I'm saying is what I'm going to do. Right. And that's I'm going to demonstrate the same leadership that I had in Anchorage. Is sometimes I took the assembly to court twice and won because they were doing things that were, quite frankly, illegal. They were trying to take executive power away.
Right.
So I'm not worried about the legislature. I'll work with them. It'll be a fight. Don't get me wrong. Everything's a fight in politics. There's nothing easy. But this is a time for strong leadership, and I think I fill that role better than anyone else.
You know, when I hear the terms and you're talking about, and I have said it on this program that, you know, we used to say we have a spending problem in this state. We don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem, but we had a spending problem
Correct.
For so long that we've created both a spending and a revenue problem, which we've kind of talked about here. And you said, well, the government just needs to create more revenue. And Anthony in the chat room makes a valid point. I think, you know, the government doesn't create revenue. All monies the government generates is extracted from the taxpayer or from businesses or from the public. And he said it concerns him when I hear people say government needs to generate more revenue, because in reality, they're saying we need to take more of your or our money. And that's, again, I think part of the problem is there's such a disconnect in Alaska specifically because the government doesn't get anything from the private economy. There's no taxation of any sort on the private economy. They're living on the permanent fund. They're living on oil royalties and revenues. So they don't really care about what happens in the private economy. There's such a disconnect. And by taking even more from other areas, and, you know, that has a trickle down on the private economy. I mean, what do you say to that? Because he's right. The revenue doesn't just generate from thin air. It's coming from people or from businesses. How do we address that?
Well, when I say generate revenue for the state, that's for the people of the state, because that's what really matters. It really bothers me and scares me, quite frankly, when a politician says we need to raise revenue, because in a politician's world, that means create more taxes. And I'm just here to tell you, it's expensive enough already living in this state. We don't need to create more taxes. We need to create more revenue. That is private enterprise who's going to power us out of this. They need more opportunity to do mining, to build roads, to do the things that we need. So for the long term, we have that revenue stream coming and growing. We need to turn around this GDP slide, and we need to grow our GDP. So he's exactly right. And when I say revenue, I guess I don't think of myself as a politician. I look at myself as a citizen, and boy, politician just said I need to increase revenue. As long as I'm governor, there's not going to be an income tax. And there's a lot of talk of that right now.
Sure.
And we're just going to end that conversation. We need to develop the resources that are right below our feet, and develop them and create long-term revenue for those businesses, for those individuals that create the jobs, and we grow our way out of this. We're not unlike the federal government. And which tells us government tends to do what government does, which is to grow itself.
Well, then
that's not their job. Their job is to get out of the way and let the economy grow and power us through these very difficult times.
Well, and like you said, they ignore arithmetic. They pretend like the laws of arithmetic do not apply to them. We're seeing that at the federal level right now. We've seen it in California. We've seen it at the state level, where we can just continue to spend no matter what, and it'll always be there. But that's not the truth.
Right.
I agree with that. And the question about whether we have an income tax or a sales tax, or I'm wondering if connecting the private economy to the government in some way, shape, or form, whether it's through a sales tax, a statewide sales tax, or an income tax, if that wouldn't benefit, because then at least they would have to look at the private economy and go, oh wait, we get money from that. Maybe we should pay attention to that.
Right. Well, be be careful when you start talking about, well, maybe we need this tax. And I mean, could I consider a seasonal sales tax possibly that might tax the tourists? But there's another problem, and I learned this hard at the assembly in the city of Anchorage, was that when you give them an opportunity to create a tax, they evolve very quickly into making a tax that they want, and it just gets bigger.
Right.
So I would, just so you know, I was never afraid of, as mayor, to veto. I vetoed a lot. I mean, like a lot, but they did override me because they were, quite frankly, a bunch of woke leftists. And that's what they do. That's how they identify it.
Well, and I think it goes back to my previous comment of, do we give them more money without guardrails or framework to hold their spending in place? And so there's always it's always a challenge, right? That's the big thing. I've only got about 3 minutes with you here. I got to let you go. But so I wanted to ask you, I guess, a final question, and then you can give us the elevator pitch for Dave Bronson. But, the how do you set yourself apart? Because again, it's a crowded field. You're 11 out of and we got 10 Republicans and 1 Democrat, I think is the final count now. What sets you apart from everybody else, every other Tom, Dick, and Harry in the race? What set Dave Bronson apart, and then where do folks go to find out more?
Okay, is what sets me apart is, quite frankly, experience. I've been in the fight. I spent 3 really difficult years in the fighting these things, spending and taxation and fixing the big problems. Like in the city, it was homelessness, and it was spending, and it was supporting law enforcement. We don't have time for on-the-job training, and a lot of these candidates, none of them have executive experience, and none of them certainly have political executive experience, and we don't have time for them to learn the job. This is the closest job. I governed over 40% of the city of this, or over 40% of the population of this state through the city. And the other thing is with the highest name ID of any other candidate, I have the best chance to win. And I'm telling you, you think it's bad with an inexperienced Republican in office. If one of them were to win, it's going to really be bad if a Democrat wins. We're in really big trouble. So I just want to tell your folks, they can contact us at davebronson.com. They can come to, if they're in Fairbanks, they can come to the announcement here at 7:30 this morning at the Westmark Hotel. We would love to see some folks here. The media is already setting up, and we're just looking forward to this announcement this morning, and then moving on to a 13-month campaign.
All right. Well, Dave Bronson, our guest, again, brand new. Thank you, Dave, for giving us the scoop here on the program. We appreciate you reaching out to us first, and
happy to.
We look forward to that, and I look forward to further conversations with you and to drill down into some of these things, because I think that's what I think we need to talk about, some of the hard conversations that a lot of the other places aren't asking some of these questions, and we're not afraid to do it. And I appreciate you coming on board to do it. So we look forward to it. Please keep us in mind, and we will talk to you again soon. Good luck this morning.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much for coming.
Take care. Yeah.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for coming on the program. Dave Bronson announcing that he is going to be the next candidate for governor here on the program. Look at us. We got a scoop. That was kind of cool, huh? That was kind of cool. Now, where does it go? What does it mean? It's at this point, it's such a crowded field. I just don't even know at this point. I don't know that coming out right out of the gate and saying that, we can't cut our way. I don't know if that sends the right. He said he's not opposed to cuts, but we can't cut our way to it, which is kind of what I said in a way, because now we're $1 billion upside down, and I don't know how you immediately cut $1 billion out of state government without doing some harm to the without doing harm to the economy, but we've got to be open to it. And I mean, he is at least not someone who is afraid to get his hands dirty and to fight it out with with a legislative body, as you saw when he was mayor in Anchorage, and then fighting it out with the assembly there. But it's oh man, this is going to be an interesting race. It's all I could say right now. This is going to be very interesting, to say the least. All right, we're gonna come. We're taking a break here, and then we're gonna come up, and I'm gonna open up the phone lines, and see what you guys have to say on this. On the other side of the break, well, first we're gonna talk about Dave's throwing his hat in the ring. You guys tell me what you think. 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864. I've gone ahead and I've opened up the phone lines now. So if you want to sound off here in the next segment as to what you think about this, then at the top of the hour, we're going to do a little history lesson. We're going to go back and talk about the permanent fund. And I'll describe why we're going to get into that after the top of the hour, but it'll be open lines as well into hour 2 tomorrow. But up next in the next segment, you tell me, now that Dave Bronson's thrown his hat into the ring, what do you think? And, again, 11 candidates in the race. I just, man, it's gonna get crowded and busy out there. We'll see. We'll be back. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Back with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. Man, it's about to get messy out there. I mean, you thought it was bad that they're... Wow. I mean, wow. This jungle primary thing is full reels, baby. Full reels. And that was one of the things that I didn't get a chance to ask because we were on limited time there. But, if he didn't get into the top, whatever, was he going to be willing to drop out if he wasn't going to be able to, be in the top 1 or 2? And so that'll be a question that we ask for next time as well. Anthony makes a valid point too when I talk about cutting and cutting $1 billion. What happens and what does it do? Anthony says harm the economy, because that's what I said. If you cut $1 billion, you can't necessarily cut $1 billion out without harming the economy. And his alternative point of view is valid. He said harm the economy needs to be evaluated. The quote unquote harm the economy. Does cutting $1 billion out of government hurt the taxpayer economy or the government's? Because when you say cut $1 billion, I hear reclaim $1 billion. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. It would definitely cause some topsy-turviness in the in the economy, but he's not wrong when it comes to reclaiming that billion at the year. Cindy said, at the end of the day, one Republican needs to represent and everyone else needs to support. She said, I want to see that these clear commitments from candidates. And I agree, I agree. And Donna Ardwin, always a gem. Donna, we got to have you back on the program. Just to chat. I mean, maybe just like a free-forming chat one of these days. Donna says, government spending harms the economy. again, you can't argue with that. You cannot argue. Government is a net consumer. It produces nothing. It is a net consumer. And quite honestly, it's not government's job to produce. That's not government's job. It's not their job to create jobs or create opportunities or whatever it is that they want to air quote it. That's the free market. The free market is the one that's in charge of all that stuff and should be. So it's crazy. Yeah, we need a Donna Day. We need a Donna Day. We should just bring Donna Arduin for just a free-forming, free-roaming discussion. She's busy, but maybe we can talk her into it. Everybody in the chat room bully Donna into coming on the program. That's all I'm saying. Gently. Don't bully her too bad. It's all fun. Let's see. Ron says, it doesn't matter how many are running. If the top 4 don't come together and choose only one, then we will end up with Tom Begich. And that would be a disaster. That's again, lots of truth being dropped in the chat room this morning. Lots of truth. Absolutely. Sorry. I'd like to hear Donna opine on the discussion between you and Dave concerning property taxes. Well, Donna made a comment yesterday. She said, because again, I think it was Art Laffer that actually came up with a Prop 13 thing. I mean, her cohort, right? She's got some insight into this. I would love to hear what Donna has to say on a fair tax idea here for the state of Alaska, or for it's basically modeled after a California Prop 13. I would definitely like to get her take on Dave and I's discussion yesterday, because yeah, that is some interesting stuff right there. Okay, we got one line on hold. I see the phone lines are open. One line, got a call from Fairbanks right now. When we rejoin the radio here in about a minute, we're going to take that phone call. Lisa and Gary, I don't know if it's Lisa or Gary, but whichever one said, I say Anthony for governor. I say Anthony DeAngelis for governor. Doesn't that sound good? That sounds great. Anthony, just take a break from fixing boilers and heating systems, my friend, and come in there, and once you flush out my boiler system, why don't you go in there and flush out government for it? Will you do that for me? Frank says, you don't like choice, MD? No, I mean, there's a difference between a choice and, so many choices that you can't, it really confuses the mind. You know what I mean? It's going to be great. And then we see some of these, you see this latest story? I haven't even read it yet. I'm just reading the headline. Adam Crum quietly committed $50 million of CBR to outside investment firm on his way out the door. I don't know what the details of it are yet, but I just don't know. I just don't know, man. I'm so bad.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, we are ready. We're continuing. We're just going through a lot of the chats in the chat room, and woof, man, there's some crazy stuff going on there. But what's your take? Now that Dave Bronson has announced on the program that he is going to be a gubernatorial, he's our newest gubernatorial candidate. What does that mean? What do you think about that? How do you feel now that there's 11? I mean, we're 13 months away. I mean, there could be more. What's your hot take on this? We're going to see what you have to say. The phone lines are open at 319-527-3864, 319-527-3864. Let's go over to the phones right now and see who's on the line. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
It's Layla, and I'm calling from Fairbanks.
Hello, Layla. Long time no hear. What's on your mind this morning?
Well, I think that Bronson will have the same relationship with the legislature that is developed with Dunleavy, where, this last session, they said, we're not going to let Dunleavy have any win. And they're going to do the same thing to Bronson. And they know it was effective in Anchorage, and they're hoping it'll be effective at the higher level on the state. And what will end up happening is that when it comes time for re-election, they will nobody will vote for them because it'll be a bad thing. I mean,
Right.
They were not able to function as governor, and that's a problem.
Well,
I think they're going to do it to any Republican governor.
that's what I was just going to
But
ask. I mean,
also,
if you've got 10 other Republicans, I mean, are they going to work with any of the? I mean, I guess maybe except for Click
No.
Bishop, right? Click Bishop, maybe they'd work with Click. But
Yeah.
I mean, but again, this is a challenge for anybody who's running right now, right? Because the legislature is antithetical to giving up any of their power.
yes. You are right, and it goes to how we vote for our legislators. And we basically need to get it straight that if they've joined that bipartisan coalition in the past, they probably aren't a very good choice if we want reform. Because they can promise, hey, this time I won't do that. But that's, not a good idea.
Yeah. So of all the candidates, I mean, you've seen all the candidates that have stood up. Is there anybody that's standing out to you? Yeah.
Wilson is probably my favorite, but there's a couple of ones that have spoken that I like what they say, but I don't think they can win.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bernadette can win. I think Bronson could probably win, but I don't think Bronson will get anything done as governor. And that's just my take on it.
And do you think he won't get anything done as governor because of the antagonistic relationship that you think would be created by that?
I don't think he will be able to work out any kind of non-antagonistic relationship. And because I watched him in Anchorage, and he didn't seem I don't know what the word for it is, psychologically able to work out such a relationship. He's not into compromise. And while you have to have some stick-to-itiveness and say, no, this is my line because these are my principles, there's got to be some area where you can compromise. Otherwise, the legislature has no reason to work with him.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my feeling about it, that there has to be a little bit of compromise in order for something to go forward.
I like Dave, and I liked what he tried to do, but I think I kind of agree that it's a little naive to say, well, the Anchorage Assembly was the worst, and this legislature will be easier. Not based on what I've been seeing. I mean, because again, they're saying the quiet part out loud too. They're saying no wins for the governor. Now, it may be Dunleavy at this point, but I think anybody who comes in to try and upset the apple cart, and I think Bronson would be much more strident than Dunleavy is on his viewpoints and his goal. And that just might actually raise the temperature even more. Not that it's a bad thing to fight, but do you want to get reform, or do you or don't you want to get reform is the question.
Right. And that's, it's a tough situation. I think that Begich would be a big mistake. And I think that if after he has totally tanked the system by overspending, we aren't only just going to lose him, that they'll reelect somebody in the second round.
Yeah.
But they will, we'll also lose Nick just because they have the same last name.
Well, and I
Yeah.
think the biggest part of this problem is that we are rapidly running out of road to kick this can down,
We
right?
are.
I mean, we've got
We are.
billion-dollar deficits moving forward. That's a question I didn't get to him yet because I don't know anybody who wants to be governor when you're going to be handed this steaming pile of, of fiscal feces. What is it? What is, what are you going to do? Because this is not, hey, we're going to be out of money in a few years. This is, we are out of money this year. And how are you going to make it work? I just don't see how, if somebody else gets in there that's just more spend, you're just going to accelerate the crash, and nobody wants that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
They just don't seem to understand over on the Democratic side that you can't spend your way out of this.
well,
It's
it's
just
not
like, a
that's not
family
just
that's going bankrupt and
Right.
they're, just, hey, let's go and take a vacation to Hawaii.
yeah, no.
It's like, what?
Well, and it's not just the Democrats, though, right? I mean, there are plenty of Republicans out there who are like, spend.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
we'll spend it. It doesn't matter. We've got money left. We've got checks. We can't be out of money. I mean, that's kind of the
Right.
attitude that we're seeing here. So absolutely. All right, Layla. Well, thank you for sounding off this morning, and I appreciate you
right.
being part of it today. Thank you for calling in.
Okay.
Layla calling in from Fairbanks there. 319-527-3864. If you want to sound off here this morning. And this is the problem, is that whatever governor that we get in there, on the conservative side, like I said, I think there would be two exceptions of the whole field right now. The only two exceptions that the current bipartisan majorities would work with would probably be Click Bishop as a moderate left Republican, who is, basically joined at the hip with the unions and things like that. I think they would work with him, and they definitely would work with Tom Begich because, again, he's in the past been part of those coalitions, and he's in with their philosophy of it's all government money and government should spend it, and they can do a better job than you can in using that. I think any other candidate, whether it's Hughes or Bernadette or Bronson or Hialala or Treg Taylor or Adam any of those, it's going to be it's going to be a fight. It's going to be a fight. What we need is somebody who is a bulldog, who is not afraid to use the bully pulpit of governorship to educate the people and point the finger where the finger needs to be pointed. That's something that this governor has not done. Governor Dunleavy has refused to use the pulpit that he has. He should have been engaging the base. He should have been doing weekly Facebook Lives saying, I want to do this and this and this, but your legislature you need to change out these legislators. That's the bully pulpit that needs to be used, explaining how this works in small words to Alaskans, so they understand that this is not strictly a governor or a legislator problem, that they've got to work together. And if we can't find people who are willing to do that, and who are willing to acknowledge simple arithmetic that you can't keep spending more than you take in, then we're going to fail. We need a governor who will do that. That's what we need. All right, up next, the PFD. That's our discussion. Hour 2, The Michael Duke Show. Well, let's see. Click Bishop was co-chair of Senate Finance and contributed to the fiscal crisis. He didn't create it all by himself, but he was definitely a big contributing factor there for sure. The unions turned Dunleavy into a eunuch with its recall effort in February of 2019. And that's the thing. I mean, Governor, he came out strong. He had the right people on his side, Donna Ardwin and everything else. It's crazy that all these things happened, and then he immediately got the pushback. And I mean, I hate to say it, kind of rolled over and wet on himself, and is like, okay, I'll just sit here, and he remained pretty quiet for the remainder of the time. It's it's so frustrating to watch, because the governor has such a the governor of the state of Alaska has such a tremendous amount of power. It is the strongest executive position of all the states. All 50 states, Alaska has the strongest governor's position. And then he could have leveraged his position and leveraged technology like social media to take his message straight to the people, without going through the filter of the mainstream media, without having to have a press conference and have his words twisted or whatever else. He could have gone out and had a weekly address and say, here's what happened this week, and here's what I was trying to get done, and here's what's happened, and here's who stood against me, and here's how they failed on basic math. No wonder our kids are flunking out. The legislature can't do basic math at this point, let alone our kids. And he could have done that. He could have been pounding that drum for weeks. And yet he didn't. He didn't. You know, he promised to come on this program every 6 to 8 weeks to sit with us and talk with us. It's been, I don't know as we've actually talked to the governor since he got reelected. I don't know if we actually talked to him during reelection. We may have, but he's failed at that. I mean, something as simple as just spending a 40-minute window once every 2 months to talk with us and to engage with the public is, it blows my, I know the governor's busy. I know 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. every night. I get that. Guess what? Me too, right? Me too. That's what I deal with. That's what every business owner deals with. But, if you make a promise, you should stick with it. I mean, if it's your base and you've got a fairly friendly forum, why wouldn't you want to take advantage of that? It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Dunleavy failed to stand tall. Yep. Rick says, anyone else notice that MD says all the right things? He might as well just sign up and make it an even dozen. Yeah. Nah. Yeah. I mean, nobody would like that. Nobody would like that. They would, because I guarantee you I would be a 1-term or less governor. If I ran for governor, my pledge would be, I am here for 1 term. I am in here with a sledgehammer and a crowbar, and I am going to dismantle all the BS that's in government, and I'm going to do it. I have 1 term to do it. I'm going to do it, and you're not going to like me, and when it's all said and done, you'll never reelect me again. That would be my pitch. I don't think I would win that. Do you? Do you? No, I didn't think so. Let's see. Teachers have very little leadership experience, so that is what we got. Okay, well, I get that. Chris just said, hatchet job for governor. You have my vote. Well, I mean, I guess, I just want the whole thing. I just want somebody to acknowledge, this is what I want. Can I share a secret with you? Here's what I want in my heart of hearts. I want somebody who's in the power structure, not a Mike Shower, not somebody in the minority, not a Kevin McCabe, somebody who's in the power structure of the finance chairs or whatever. I just want somebody to acknowledge that you can't ignore arithmetic. I want somebody to acknowledge that you cannot ignore the simple fact that we can't continue to spend more than we take in. and expect that it's going to work out okay. Because it's not. It's not going to work out okay. If we keep going, we could cut ourselves. I mean, it says Charlie says, if that's my pitch, why do you say we can't? We could cut our way. Oh, it's going to be messy though. It's going to be, I mean, it will hurt. I mean, I'm just saying in the political will spectrum, we can't cut our way because nobody wants to cut. If you gave me the shears, I would be unpopular. There's no doubt about that. I would be unpopular. Because if I had my druthers, we'd start from zero and work our way up. And stop when we ran out of money. That's what we would do. All right, here we go.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
Just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Good morning, my friends. Welcome to the Thursday edition of the Michael Dukes Show, broadcasting live across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator, and live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com, where you'll find links to the audio-only live stream, as well as links to our social media sites, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, where we simulcast the show via video every morning. You can see my bearded face. I know you probably don't want to. I understand. Me either. But I mean, there's like 5 of me. I'm looking at all the, it's painful, but it's what the public demands. So we do it. Anyway, you can come out here and join us. Appreciate you coming into this Thursday edition. 43 blistering degrees here on top of the world in Homer, Alaska. Just been a beautiful couple days. And it's been good. I hope you are settling in for the new winter. October the 2nd. Wow, October the 2nd. We are just 5 days away now? 5 days away from election season. And of course, early voting is up right now in the Fairbanks area and in the Kenai Peninsula area. So up in the interior at Fairbanks North Star Borough and in the Kenai Peninsula Borough, early voting is going on right now, and the vote takes place next Tuesday, the official day to vote. If you're in the Mat-Su, listening in the Mat-Su, you are going to get early voting on the 20th of October, and your election day is going to be November the 4th. So that's going to be your election day in the valley there. So you go. We just finished up a big announcement for those of you just joining us. Dave Bronson actually joined us in hour 1 with his official announcement. He gave the show the scoop, which I thought was very nice of him, to let us know that he is now running for governor of the state of Alaska. So he makes number 11. That's 11 little Indians all in a row. So you're going to have plenty of choice. You'll have plenty of choice for candidates in 13 months from now when we vote for, well, that'll be the official vote. I guess the primary will be in September or August. I guess August is the primary for governor. Anyway, you'll have plenty of stuff to do. But But I mean, I would love to see what you guys have to say about that. I've opened up the phone lines today. In hour 2, we're going to sorry, somebody just sent me a text. I'm laughing over. So we're going to discuss that. If you want to talk about the Bronsons and the governor's races and all that stuff, feel free to do so. 319-527-3864, 319-527-3864. But I want to talk about the PFD. And I was thinking about this yesterday. I got a call last evening from somebody that I haven't talked to in, I don't know, probably 5 years, maybe 4 or 5 years since I really had a talk with, but I've known him for 30 years. And they called me out of the blue, and I'm like, hello, and they said, I just want to get your take on the PFD. My first thought was, have you listened to my show? I mean, that have you listened to it? But again, patiently, I said, well, I believe we should get a full PFD, and here's why, and here's what's going on. And they were just aghast at everything that's going. They were outraged about the fact that the PFD was only $1,000, and that it was the lowest one, and everything else. And how could we get here, and how did we do this, and why are we electing these people, and what is the government, and why aren't we more upset? Why isn't more people talking? And they said, they've been trying to do some research and put together a timeline of everything that happened, and what, and all I could think about the whole time that they were talking about this was,
Welcome to the party, pal.
Where have you been? Where have you been? I mean, here we are 8 years later. 2017 was when the first PFD was taken. And it's taken you 8 years to become outraged about it? And I just thought, because then I was laying things out, and here's what it was supposed to do, and here's what was going on, and here's what happened before that. And I just thought, maybe we should just lay all this out again in a linear form and give people the backstory and the history of how we got to where we're at today. Then on top of that, Senator Rob Yunt, posted day before yesterday, and I didn't see it until last night. He posted a post on Facebook about the PFD, which was then followed up by a rebuttal from John Faulkner, one of the owners and editors of Must Read Alaska, where he follows up on Rob Yunt's post and talks a little bit more about it. And so I thought, of all these things, I thought, well, this is the perfect time. I don't have a candidate on. I thought I was going to have another gubernatorial candidate, but it looks like Matt Hailala will be with us next week, and we'll be talking about that then. But I thought this is the perfect time to do it. So first and foremost, I guess we'll go through Rob's comments about the PFD, and some of his thoughts on how we go about, doing things. So we'll read through this real quick, and I'll give you the highlights of it. But I do want to get, and then he's done a second part update yesterday. He did a second part update where he talked about he laid some graphs and some charts and stuff on the up on Facebook about where we were at and how much we had and what we were doing, and you could see where we go from here. Okay, so are you ready? Let's dive into this here and start talking. This is Rob Yunt's piece. He said, the truth about the PFD, part of a series, one of 3, big problems and tough conversations. He says, I'm passionate about getting back to paying a full statutory PFD. It's Alaska's mineral rights and one of the primary reasons I ran for office. To do so, we cannot sugarcoat reality. We must study history and acknowledge how the PFD came to be. These lessons will forge our future if we know the past and plan accordingly for the future. This will be especially true during the next 3 years, which I believe will make or break the future of the PFD, which I'm going to say I think 3 years is optimistic. I believe that this could be the last year that we receive the PFD, quite honestly. Most importantly, he continues, we cannot cave to special interest. I'm not worried about being liked by bloggers or special interest groups. In fact, I take a lot of pride in not being liked by them. Let me be clear. My priority is doing right for Alaskans' checkbooks. I didn't head to Juneau to play it safe. I came to fix our fiscal problems and run a state government with the same level of intensity I run my 2 businesses. If we don't, there will be no PFD or savings accounts left to discuss in the near future. So, he said, let's get to it. Adjusted for inflation, Alaskans are about to receive the smallest PFD ever, and much less even than the statutory formula says it should be. Yeah, because the statutory formula is putting it somewhere in the realm of $3,700 to $3,900, right? So we're basically getting a quarter of what we should be getting. That's pretty obvious. He continues, most Alaskans are aware that the statutory PFD hasn't been paid since the Walker days, but forget that in the same period of time, the state has blown through approximately $25 billion in savings. The money's gone. It's not coming back. The only reason we didn't burn through more savings is because the legislature began the percent of market value draws on the permanent fund in 2018 to fund the budget. Total POMV draws to date, approximately another $26 billion. Look at the governor's 10-year forecast, and you'll probably even get more queasy. Yes, somebody finally mentioned the 10-year, what we've been talking about on this program for almost 2 years. Okay. Look at the governor's 10-year forecast. You'll probably even get more queasy. It shows Alaska going another $14 billion or so upside down once the last cent of our savings are gone. Read that again. It's brutal. Thank goodness it's illegal or to borrow money for state operations. I'd hate to hand our kids or grandkids a pile of debt like the federal government is doing. If there's one thing I've learned in 21 years of running my companies, it's this. Solving big problems requires tough conversations. When I ran for state senate, I knew those would come fast, especially if we're serious about fixing our structural deficit and restoring a statutory PFD. That's why I didn't wait. 3 weeks into session, I followed my first corporate revenue bill. Soon after, I introduced a bill to restructure the Department of Correction, whose spending is out of control. I knew both pieces of legislation would ruffle feathers, but that's life, and I firmly stand by both. At the beginning of this year, the governor handed us a budget with approximately a $1.6 billion deficit. I was shocked. I still can't believe it's even legal for a governor to submit a preliminary budget that's not balanced. Even worse, I found out that this has been happening for years. Imagine a CEO or CFO doing that in the private sector. It'll never happen. To put it in perspective, $1.6 billion deficit is so massive you could lay off every state trooper, every fish and game officer, close every prison, every courthouse, and never plow another state-maintained road again, and maybe to balance the budget depending on the year. Obviously, most Alaskans, including myself, would not approve of having zero public safety or plowing, so we've got to create a different path. From one Alaskan to another, if you're thinking of running for governor in 26, you darn well better leave the cheesy campaign slogans at the coat check and show up with a real fiscal plan. That plan must include real spending cuts and an honest conversation about revenue, but not new taxes on individual Alaskans. We're a natural resource state with a lot to offer the world. Any real plan should focus on maximizing the returns of our assets, not using the PFD or taxing residents. Alaskans deserve the truth about the PFD future. Any gubernatorial candidate who doesn't have a scientifically detailed financial plan doesn't deserve our votes. In the coming days, I'm going to release the next portion of this op-ed. We'll take a deeper look at the PFD's history, the POMV draw policy, Representative Jubilee Underwood's House Joint Resolution to require future governors to produce a balanced budget, and what must be done to stop using the PFD to fund government so we can return those mineral rights to Alaskans' bank accounts where they belong. And so, I mean, this is I think, good, strong, strident commentary on what's going on. The problem is, and I think John Faulkner picked up on this right away, was that while Rob Yunt is calling on gubernatorial candidates to have a, what did he say, scientifically detailed financial plan, he himself doesn't offer one. And not that he has to, it's a commentary. But it would have been really good to have kind of a blueprint to say, like this one, and then lay something out. John Faulkner, and you can go read John's piece over at Must Read. He lays out his detailed plan, which includes, he had a proposed fiscal framework, which basically talked about 4 key reforms: stabilizing Medicaid, replacing the K-12 bureaucracy with ESA accounts, developing low-cost energy, and restoring a statutory PFD while repaying the arrears, paying back what they've taken. That's a lofty plan. That's a lofty goal, especially for a state that's already broke, right? Not only do you need to do that, you need to go back and pay back all these dividends that you didn't pay us over the last 8 years. That's a heavy lift, right? I'm just going to say that's a heavy lift. But at least it is an outline of a plan. Right? But how did we get here? How did we get here? I wanted to give you something that you could listen to here on the radio, but then you could go back later and share with your friends, like on a podcast or on a video, and say, how did we get to this part? And how did we get to where we're at? So that more people understand how the PFD is supposed to work. And what were the actions that happened that got us to the point to where they decided to take it? Now, I'm going to steal a couple of the charts that Rob put up in his post because they make some very valid points in this modeling. And I think it's a eye-opening when you look at it in black and white or in colors at this point because they're bar graphs. It's interesting to look at it and see where we've gone and what has happened. So in the next 2 segments, we're going to bust this down and we're going to break it out. And if you want to call in at any time, phone lines are open this morning to discuss this. If you want to give me your hot take on something, feel free to do so. We haven't had a chance to do any kind of real open line in the last 3-4 weeks with all the candidates we've have on. But the phone lines are open right now, 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864. Feel free to give us a call. We'd love to hear what you guys have to say. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll be back with more on the PFD right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. We are ready to go. Let me get back to the chat room. And I'm sorry, I forgot to mash the button for the timer. Okay. Let me go back to the chat room here to see what you guys are talking about. Why is the dividend only $1,000, says Ron? Because Alaskans voted for it. They sent the same people back to Juneau. Insanity, doing the same thing and expecting different outcomes. Yup. Who is the Who is the biggest middle finger to the legislature? That's who I choose. Let's see. Kevin's dropping some link. Kevin, when you put all these links in there, would you send me these on a DM? Would you DM me all these links? Because it's hard for me to go back and try and pick them out later. If you would send me some of the links that you just shared in the chat room over the last 10 minutes or so, I would love to be able to go back and reference those later. Terry says, Rob is my senator, and I don't have an ounce of trust in anything he has to say. Okay. What makes you so mad at him, Terry? I mean, I understand that he proposed, taxes, and he worked across the aisle with some people, but I'm just curious, Imagine a person running for office and not knowing what the fiscal state of the state is. Oh, Kevin asked, does it sound like someone might be running for lieutenant governor? Well, that could be it. It could be a positioning. That would be interesting. Did Yunt vote to override the governor? I believe he did. Yeah, I believe he did. Okay. We need to have a robust. The word robust is definitely going to be a new word in my lexicon. Robust. That's what Calvin von Schreggi said, or is it Natasha von Schreggi? Is it? Those peasants, they should like the robust PFD we gave them. Those peasants, I can't believe that they're so.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me. I just don't fathom it.
Yes, that's why we gave them the robust PFD of only 1/4 of what they were owed. Anyway, Timothy said, it sounds like he's a day late and $1 short. I don't know. It does make more sense if he sounds like, it does sound like that he was, like he's maybe positioning himself for a lieutenant. I hadn't considered that. Thanks for throwing that out there. I think it was Kevin. Does he sound like he's running for lieutenant governor? Yep. Yeah, if he voted to override the governor's veto, then how much do you really care about a balanced budget if you voted for that? I'm just curious. Terry said she was involved in vetting him twice. Ended up, it was lie after lie, won't tolerate a liar. He was that. Really? I'm interested to hear more. Okay. Let's see here. Where are we? Oh, we're 30 seconds out. Okay, we're about ready to rejoin the radio. I guess we'll just get started. We'll just get started and dive into this. I guess I'll make that announcement when we get back to the radio. Okay. Can you do me a favor? Can you share the show this morning? There's 50, 60 of you between Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble, but only 20 shares or likes. Maybe there's more shares. I think I can only see the likes. But if you share and like, sharing is caring.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Huh. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, so let's dive into this. Now, fair warning, because we are a low-budget radio program, and I decided to do this discussion on the PFD last night after a 13-hour day. I'm doing it without notes, okay? I didn't pull all my references and everything else that I would normally have available at hand. So we're just gonna just do it without notes. So we're gonna do it off the top of our head. So if I make a mistake on a specific date or something like that, please forgive me. Okay. And know that in the future, I will take the time to pull everything out and make sure that I've got all my T's crossed and my I's dotted. But this is just basically an overview of the permanent fund dividend, what it entailed, what happened, and how we got to this point. All right. So consider this an overview, and we'll come back to this. Okay. At a later date make sure that I got all the details right. The permanent fund dividend was Jay Hammond's vision to basically allow Alaskans, who are the owners of the resource. Alaskans collectively, we have a socialistic state constitution in terms of we own the resources collectively together, right? And sorry, I'm getting text messages and all kinds of stuff this morning. And so they created the PFD as a way to not only, and the reason that he did this, I guess I should back up just a second, is because Hammond could see, he was a visionary. He could see what was going to happen. He could see what was happening in his time with all the money that was flowing into the state. Now you have to remember, when the state first started to receive oil royalties and revenues, it was a shock to the system. Because at the time when they received that first royalty check, which was almost $1 billion, it was 900 million, roughly 900 million in change, almost $1 billion in money. This was in 1969, 1970. They received this first royalty check. Now, at the time, the entirety of the state budget was $162 million. I mean, like, you think about state budget today and it's 5.7 billion. Back then, it was $162 million for everything in the state. Now, remember, in 1969, a brand new Mustang cost you $3,700, right? So we got some inflation and some other things going on, but $162 million, and somebody handed them a check for nearly $1 billion. And the legislators at the time proceeded to burn through that money like it was a house of fire, right? They spent it like drunken. They made drunken sailors look bad. They were so much like drunken sailors, right? And Hammond realized that if this continued, where all this money was flowing into the state government for a state with a very small population, that it would lead to excessive, zealous spending outside of the influence of the citizens. And so that's where the idea of the permanent fund was born, because one, he wanted to make sure that Alaskans received a share of their own, that it shouldn't just be the state that got all the benefit of the oil royalty and wealth, that the citizens should get a portion of it. Secondly, he knew that it was a way, and you can read about this in his writings, including Diapering the Devil. He knew it would be a way to tie for the people to be engaged, the citizenry to be engaged with the government spending, because they would have skin in the game, right, so to speak. So that was the beginning of the PFD, and they tried to tie it to residency, and that certain people would get a certain amount. And anyway, that went to court. That was the Zobel decision. And so then it was anybody who was a resident of Alaska for 12 months who had been a resident could then apply for the PFD. And that's where we ended up with the statutory PFD. And it paid out. And the first year it was $1,000 the first year. That was the first payout, was $1,000. And then it was based on a 5-year rolling average of the earnings. Now, again, a quick discussion on how the PFD, the statutory PFD, is formulated, for those of you who don't know. The statutory formula, which we used up until 2017, was that the permanent fund, which was created by depositing 25% of all royalties from oil and resources were deposited into the permanent fund. That fund was then invested. And then every year, as those investments earned a return, the earnings, those returns would then be deposited into a separate account of the permanent fund. They're permanent fund accounts, but you have the corpus, which is the main pot of money where they deposited those 20, and they still do, 25% of all royalties go into that fund every year. And then you had the earnings reserve account, where the proceeds or the profits that were earned, basically the stock dividends from what they were investing in, were then spun off into the earnings reserve account. The earnings reserve account was accessible by the legislature. The corpus of the fund, the seed corn, was not, and is not to this day. The dividend was factored on a 5-year rolling average. So what they do, and that's why that first payment was $1,000, and then every year since then, the dividend has kind of gone, it's been on an upward trajectory. There's been years when it's been higher and years when it's been lower, but that's because these guys were geniuses and they realized that the markets are going to go up and down. And so what we need is something that takes into account those market forces of the stock market and the balance of the fund going up and down. And so they created the rolling average. And what they do is they take the last 5 years of earnings. How much have we made each year for the last 5 years? And they average it out. And that's the earnings of the fund. That's the 5-year rolling average. And then they take out a portion of that and they paid it as a PFD. Okay. And what it was, Hammond's ultimate vision was that 50% of that money would be retained for government spending and 50% would go to the PFD. But initially, because the government never tapped it, for years, the government never tapped into the earnings reserve because they were receiving so much money from outside of that. They didn't use any of that. They didn't really use any of that money. It wasn't until the percent of market value draw came in 2016, 2017 that they started to do that. But anyway, that's where the money comes from. It's earnings of our not directly from oil. It was the royalties from oil being invested, and then the dividend, just like you invest in a stock market or a money market account, you receive a dividend back from those earnings. So its genesis is in oil and resource production, but the money that you receive is actually investment returns from that money. Okay, so then we get into what happened in the early 2000s. We've always had a problem with spending in the state. I mean, the state has always loved to spend every dollar that they could, every little bit of money that they could. That was just kind of how they operated, right? That's just kind of how they wanted to do it. So again, this is why Hammond put this together, because he knew that would be the intent and the tendency of the legislature to spend every available dollar. That's why he created it. And we pretty much succeeded in doing that. Now, we had some really good years. You'll remember we had some really, really good years, especially during the Palin administration. You'll remember that when she took over, that was Murkowski. We'd had some struggles. We'd had some talk. Remember, that was the first time we'd heard some talk about potentially taxing Alaskans. Murkowski he put on a tire tax and all these kind of things. And when Palin took over, one of the first things she did was she walked into a meeting of her cabinet and said, everybody bring me back a proposal to cut 10% of your budget. I remember this conversation because I talked to her about this at the time. She goes, yeah, it was very unpopular. But she had just come from running smaller governments. And she said, why should we be immune to the, having to live within what the economy is bringing? So she brought the government in line early on in her administration, was able to put it all together. And there could be a whole conversation about ACES and tax structure and all this other kind of stuff, but I'm trying to keep it just to the PFD. Then in 2007, 2008, oh man, bumper crop. Remember? That's when oil went to $150 a barrel for oil. Do you remember that? Because that was the year that we got the PFD. And I want to say, if I remember correctly, that PFD that year was $3,000. And on top of that, we got energy relief from the Palin administration because we had so much excess money in the state, because there's an inverse correlation between the price of oil, between what benefits the state itself and what benefits the citizens, right? When oil prices are low, it's bad for state revenues, but it's good for the citizens because we can heat our home affordably. We can put gas in the car. We don't have to worry about it. When oil was at $150 a barrel, I remember I had to pay almost $6.50 for heating oil. And I had 1,000-gallon tank, which I would use in a single winter. Okay? Do you remember that? And so when oil prices were high, it's great for the state, but not so great for the consumer. And so that's where we were at in fiscal year 2007, 2008. The state was really doing well. The state was doing A-okay. And at that time, we had an earnings reserve account balance of roughly $5 billion. We had $1 billion in our statutory reserve account, which is one of the savings accounts. And the third account, which was the constitutional budget reserve, had $8.1 billion in it in 2008. Now, in 2009, moving forward, that's when we started to see the change, because we came off the high cotton season. We'd gotten used to it. We were spending the money. We created programs. We did all this kind of stuff. And what happened? Well, we'll tell you in just a moment, because we're up against the break. This should have taken 3 segments. It really should have, because I'm not going to get to it all today. I can tell already. But we're gonna continue it, and I'm gonna have some charts up. I'm using a chart that Rob Yunt put up on his post yesterday, just to explain some of these things. So if you want to go check it out, you can go over to facebook.com/MichaelDukeShow/live and see what I'm talking about. We're gonna continue the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Sourdough Steel. I love it. He said, Alaska fell into the celebrity syndrome. We got rich and hooked on drugs, and now we're spiraling out of control. Yeah. Money's one hell of a drug, right? Other people's money's one hell of a drug. Yeah. We got rich and hooked on drugs, and now we're spiraling out of control. Abso-freaking-lutely. Okay. I'm going backwards here to see what's going on. Frank says, yep, I still have to fill up that 1,000-gallon tank. $2.83 a gallon yesterday at the pump for heating oil. Yeah. No, yeah. No, I remember that year when that was it 2007? And I was panicking a bit. I'll be honest with you. I was panicking a bit because I just didn't have $7,000 laying around to fill up my fuel tank, because that's what it was going to cost. I mean, we were going into winter, It was going to be a tough winter. It was 2007 or 2008. And the price on oil on heating oil spiked from high $3, just under $4 to over $6.5, almost $7. And boo, baby, you could have heard a pin drop around my house. I was not a happy person. So yeah, that was a deal. Too bad the show couldn't share for us once we sign on, said Cindy. I mean, well, that'd be great if it did it automatically, but that would kind of defeat the purpose of interaction, wouldn't it? I mean, you should just, Cindy, you should just train yourself. When you jump on the show, the first thing you do is you like and share it, right? I mean, you just like and share it. Chris says, when are they going to repay the CBR? Oh, isn't that the $10 billion question in the room? I mean, we're not even going to get to that. We're not even going to get to that this morning. I can tell you that for sure. Yeah. Von Imhoff's comment a couple of years ago, we have a surplus. We have to find somewhere to spend. We have so much money, we don't know where to spend it, I think was the actual comment. And, of course, there was no discussion there in paying back the CBR or anything else. But there you go. There you go. Okay. Yeah. So we're gonna get into this. Oh man, so much money that was spent over the course of the years. So much money. The peak was in 2014. That's when we had, between the CBR, the SBR, and the earnings reserve, we had almost $21 billion in those accounts. And they've just been spent down and down and down and down. Yeah. And you had more cost. Oh, because I chose to be part of the triangle of death. That was Frank's little comment there. I chose to be part of the triangle of death. I lived in that part of North Pole that had the bad air quality. And then I added to it because then I installed a wooden coal stove, because I needed to keep the heat in the house because I couldn't afford to do it. I mean, that was, I remember it was in those last few years before we left. I had 1 month where it got so cold that my heating oil bill for a single month was $1,433 for a single month. And my electric bill was another $530, $540. So we were $2,000 in the hole before we even paid the mortgage or bought groceries or anything else. Oof. Yeah. I mean, when I left Fairbanks, even as it got a lot cheaper, later on. But I mean, I saved $5,000 in utilities in the first 8 months after I moved out of Fairbanks. That's a lot. That's a big raise. Anyway, here we go. We're getting ready to jump back into it. We're 20 seconds out. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, and bookmark this, because we're going to come back and continue to talk about this. So here we go. Where were we? Final thing. Yeah, a wooden coal stove. It was a wood and coal stove. It burned both. It was awesome. It's awesome. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Okay, I can tell you right now, we're probably not going to get through all of this today. I guess I should have stopped. Probably should have started with Yunt stuff in the last hour. But anyway, we're talking about the history of the PFD. Okay, so we were in the 2007, 2008 range, and we were still seeing record high oil prices, right? The state was awash in money. There are two main savings accounts in the state. Up until this point, there are two main savings accounts. One was the Constitutional Budget Reserve, which requires a 3/4 vote of the legislature to tap into. Okay. And then there is the Statutory Budget Reserve, which was more like a regular savings account. It could be tapped at any time, and it was a much smaller fund. They both earn returns, but the thing. And then you have the earnings reserve again, which we talked about as being the main depository for any earnings from the permanent fund itself. So in 2008, 9, and 10, we had about $8 to $10 billion in the Constitutional Budget Reserve. That was monies that were sitting there. We were slowly depositing more money into the Statutory Budget Reserve. And again, still spending money like drunken sailors. We were high on the cotton. Remember, things were high. And then we come to the mid-teens. About fiscal year 2013, 2014, all of a sudden, the music stopped and oil prices started to crater. We also had the investiture of SB 21, which was the new oil taxation scheme, and that's a whole show in and of itself. What I think was probably problematic. I agree that we needed to change ACEs, which was the structure that was put in place under Palin, but I don't think SB 21 was the answer. And I think I have been proven right since then. But at the same time, we were losing some of the monies that we had been receiving, and the revenues to the state were dropping. So then between the years of 2013 to 2017, we started spending money. We drained out from its peak at 2014, when we had about $20 billion in all the accounts. We started to balance the budget out of our savings. Now, this would have been a good time for people to recognize, people in the legislature, Republicans, Democrats. And remember, this was a Republican-controlled legislature at this point. So you can't just blame the Democrats on this. We could have taken it as a sign as we started to see that, hey, we're spending more than, our budgets are not balanced without going into savings. And that's not a long-term solution. And we should acknowledge that, and we should fix it. Remember, that was the year 2013, 2014 was the year that Sean Parnell wrote a budget and based the budget on $115 a barrel for oil. But by the time the session started, oil was somewhere in the low 80s, high 70s, low 80s. So he'd already written a budget that was well beyond what we could afford. And instead of taking it as a warning to say, maybe we should look at and start to prioritize, start to trim back, start to, pull back a little bit and batten down the hatches and, do things that any normal household or business budget would do. Instead, they drew monies from the savings account. They drained money from the SBR, which had been at a high just 2 years before of down to $5 billion. They drew the SBR down to nearly nothing, had less than $300 million in it. By 2015 and 2016, they had drained the SBR to nothing. And then the CBR went from having a high of almost $13 billion in it. In just 2 short years, it had $2 billion in it. Over the course of 3 or 4 years, they spent about $16 billion out of savings. Instead of facing the facts and facing the truths that they were living beyond their means, they just drew all the monies out of savings and said, we'll give that to somebody else, kick the can down the road. which leads us up to 2016, 2017. When Bill Walker half the PFD. Now, his argument was, we're going to need that for the future. We're going to need that to fund government. The irony of that, though, is that they didn't use it to fund government. That money sat in that account for 3 years. From 2016 to 2019, that account went from $6 billion to about $16.5 billion at its peak. And then finally in 2020, they drew the first tranche of money out of the permanent fund with the POMV draw. But again, he withheld that money from the people as a way to just pay for, basically to tax the people. And they had to do that because there was no more money. The SBR in 2020 was at zero. There was no money in it. And the CBR had about $1.3, $1.4 billion in it. And we were talking about huge deficits. And that's the first year where we had to take a $5 billion POMV draw. The bottom line is that we have allowed the politicians of this state to continue to excess spend for the last 10 years. They had the warning signs were in 2013, 2014, right in there, going into 2015. We had the warning signs that we could not continue to do what we were doing. And yet we allowed it to continue. No politician had that. Well, there was a few that talked about it, but no politician in leadership, no leadership group had the courage to say, we can't continue to spend the way that we're spending. It's going to cost us money. And then, of course, when Walker took the PFD, then they were saved, right? Because by 2017, there was only 2017, 2018, there was only $4 billion about roughly in savings left, most of it in the CBR. The next year it went down to $1.4 billion in the CBR with nothing in the statutory budget reserve, meaning there was no more money. And yet we continue to send the same group of people back to Juneau time and time and time again. And their answer is, of course, not to cut the size and scope of government back. And I just want you to put yourself in this position. You're a household owner. You're spending money. You've got some money in savings. You know, you got $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 in savings, and you are running your household budget. But every year you're having to draw 20 to 30% of your savings to keep up with your lifestyle. Shouldn't you be asking the question about what happens when I run out of that savings? Should I be adjusting my lifestyle now to fix it? I mean, sure, I may need to get a better paying job, but how do I fix it in the short term? This is a deeper conversation that we really need to have. And I hope more people understand how the PFD works and what's going on. But the problem is we're living beyond our means in this state. Tomorrow, JD to Chili Reason Magazine joins us for Firearms Friday, the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Wow, I mean, the whole hour was just so fast. So fast. Yes, I agree, Chris. Chris says the legislature failed to override the governor's veto that year. They are as much to blame as Walker is. I would argue they're more to blame. Because the governor can propose it, but it's up to the I mean, they should have voted to override it immediately. They didn't even attempt to. And when I asked Peter Machicki about it, why didn't we put this to a vote of the people? And I was talking about the POMV and some of the other things, and he said, well, people would vote with their wallet. Exactly. You knew it would fail if it was put to a vote of the people. That's the problem. Okay, all right, I gotta go. Be kind, love one another, live well. We'll see you guys.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.